Pardon my throat. I've been kind of sick, hadn't felt real great, but the oil field don't wait. So I got some things to do today. Got some electrical problems. See if we can get the old fire breathing Ford to run here, and see if we can fix something. It's pretty cold last night. It's 11 o'clock. It's up to probably 50. This thing's pretty cold natured. See if she'll go. I have to get some ether. The clutch pedal's stuck to the floor. It's coming back to life. All right, I hope you can hear me. I'm trying to talk loud. My voice is kind of inferior at the moment. So what are we doing today? So I got to change out a few components, and I wanted to take you along, kind of show you a day, a day in the life of the stuff I got to deal with. I've got several leases up here, and obviously, this part of Texas is really flat. There's no hills or anything, but this particular area is kind of high elevation, for around here. It's maybe, I don't know, 100 foot higher or something else than everything else around it. And I think because of that, I don't really know, but for one reason or another, I assume the high elevation, it takes a lot of lightning strikes. We fight lightning continuously with our electrical systems. And what I'm going to do today is basically go repair what a lightning strike has done. So what I'm going to change out, there's two different panels on the same transformer. One of them has got a phase monitor blown up, and the other's got a contactor. And anyway, I wanted just to show how this stuff blows up. It's like you put a firecracker in it. I mean, it's like a water primer cord. I mean, it doesn't just smoke, it explodes. And I wanted to go kind of show some of that. Anyway, I want to upgrade this contactor up a size, which may be a kind of a pain. I don't know what. I think something's up with the clutch on this truck. The clutch feels weird. Twice I push the clutch in, the clutch goes forward and it doesn't disengage. I think the slave cylinder, master cylinder may be going out or something. But it still feels funny even though it's working, sort of. But anyway, most of the electrical infrastructure out here I own. And this particular area, this particular lease, these two leases, the transformers are actually owned by Encore. They're owned by the electric provider. And most of the transformers, in fact all of them except that one, I own them, so I maintain all my refusal, whatever. Anyway, I'll show you when we get out there. But there's a primary. It's 12,000 volts. It brings electricity in down the road, and there is line fuses that's Encore's, that I can't mess with. And often what happens is we'll take a lightning strike out there, and it blows one of the line fuses, and so one of the three phases goes dead. Now this is going to get a little bit deep, but we've only got two phases out there. They only bring in two phases of primary, and the transformers are wired in an open delta configuration, and so there's only two transformers on the pole, and we bring in, like I say, two phases. Only have two transformers, and of course it's 483 phase open delta. If you don't understand, that doesn't matter. But anyway, if you lose one of the primary phases, since it's open delta, you'll lose one of the phases in your three-phase secondary. And if you do that, it's called single phase, and you've got to be careful, because at the very best you'll blow fuses and trip overloads at your motors, but often you can actually burn your motors up. What these panels are designed to do is they have two functions, and one is a phase monitoring system. So if we lose a phase, which is common, this happens almost monthly, if not bi-monthly. My voice is going away. I hope this will work. And when they lose a primary phase to be a lightning strike or something, the phase monitor turns these switches off and kills all the power. And so then when the electrical provider comes out there and refuses the primaries, the power comes back on. It just turns the lease back on without having any, to go refuse anything or burn anything up and causing any additional problems. The other thing that these are used for is in our water systems. These leases out here make a lot of salt water, and they've got float switches in the tanks along with some other safeties. And if we have a problem at the tank battery or with a separator or a leak in the dike or several other things, and I think in a later video I may show you kind of how those are set up. It's really simple. But if we have a major catastrophic failure of something at the tank batteries, it's got a signal wire that comes back to these and turns the lease off. So if you have a failure, you don't continue to have a failure. It makes less of an environmental disaster. So I'm not too sure how well you can see here, but over here across the road, this is Encore's primary. This brings in 12,000 volts. The only thing Encore owns out here in the electrical provider is actually this primary. Now, if you'll notice, there's some wires here that cross the road, and actually go back to where we're going to be in just a minute. The second deal, these are all mine. This is all my secondary. You can sit farther off the road over there. There's a broken pole, or a replaced pole, I should say. And anyway, this goes on down to where we're working. We're actually going to be down there on that corner pole. I'm not sure you can see it. But anyway, we had a transformer fuse blown here, and then we also had a primary fuse. So one of these phases was dead, and then the other one had a transformer fuse tripped. So we had no voltage out of those transformers and into my secondary. So let's pull in here. When we get over to that pole right there, I'll get back with you. That other pole is right behind me, but I wanted to go around and turn all the switches off on all the wells and kind of inspect this a little bit, make sure we don't have any other problems, because often there is. And sure enough, the first one I come to, we have had another explosion here. Anyway, I was trying to, oh, it went. Did you see that? That's what lightning does out here. The first thing I'm going to do is get in the bucket and go up there and disconnect this wire, and we'll have to deal with this at a later date to get this back going.
All right, let's jump up here. Jump up here and do some. See if I can clamp you on here somewhere.
This thing's cold. The hydraulics are slow. It's always slow, but it's extra slow today. So I've got to give some context to what's coming up. When we get off this pole, I go to the next pole. It's supposed to have been today's project, and I realize that the contactor's missing a few parts, and I don't have enough stuff to make it happen. At this point, I go to the other panel, which is supposed to be the second project for the day, before I found the first one, and I don't give a very good lead in. We just sort of walk up to it, but we're fixing to go to two different places right back to back here. Anyway, I got to get some more stuff. I don't have enough stuff to make this work. I didn't realize this contactor missed a few pieces. Okay, this is a phase monitor, and what it does is it measures the voltage of each phase. The three phases coming in, I don't know if you can see the wires, first, second, third phase. The bottom wire is a signal wire, kind of like we talked about down there. This is set up a little bit differently. So anyway, when I turn this on, it's showing, it's got a red flash, and it's saying that there's a phase loss. But I don't think that there is. I think it's just the monitor's bad. This is the same deal. You can see all the crap that's blown up in this thing. It's just how it is. There's no use in making it perfect because stuff blows up continuously. Anyway, so I've got there's a start delay on these, which is really handy. It kind of starts all these different leases incrementally, and I'm gonna leave it at about 10 seconds. So if electricity blinks, it doesn't try to start everything all at the same time. But anyway, what we've got going here is this phase monitor is measuring off the voltage under the fuses that runs the water pump. So if we've got a fuse blows here, or you know, a loss of voltage through anything else, so this is, you know, where I showed you when we came in, that goes right down there. Those transformers that runs what we were working on a while ago is just off in the distance. I don't know if you can see them, but anyway, this tells if basically there's voltage to the water pump, so we know we don't have a voltage failure at the water pump. And then it sends power transformed 120 volts from 480 through this to 2 relays. One relay is what makes the water pump where to run, so if we have a phase loss, it turns the water pump off. You know, the water pump will, you know, run on hand there. Of course, if it's on automatic, it's got a head pressure switch that'll turn it on when the water tank gets full. And then the other one sends the voltage through this. I'm scared to touch all this crap. It looks scary. It blows up all the time. Up the pole and down that bottom wire. And this bottom wire goes to a contactor, kind of like what we looked at a while ago on that pole that powers several wells to that pasture. And then that wire crosses a road and goes about 1.5 miles to another set of wells that's also part of this lease. I don't really understand why it's like that, but for some reason back in the 20s when they leased this lease, they leased it as 2 pieces. There's 10 acres about 1 mile away as the crow flies. The wire's a lot longer than 1 mile, and 40 acres here. And so we used to have a problem. The electricity would go off here for some reason and not over at the wells, and the water tank would run over. And so basically this wire goes all the way the heck back around to those other wells, and it sends 120 volts down that wire, and that 120 volts is a signal to let the wells run. So if you turn this switch off, kills power to this, kills power to this, and it kills power to that 120 volts, it will turn the wells off over there. So this switch here is actually like a auto offhand switch for the wells. We'll let this come back on. It'll take it 10 seconds. Came on there, and we'll turn this to auto, and that should turn the wells on. It's on the other end of the lease. This is also hooked up. It's got this signal wire that goes over in the tank, and it's got this like one of those little dinky float switches, and if the water tank gets full, it will turn off the wells, along with having, you know, typically you can just use a setup like this to make sure your water pump has power. If it has power, you usually don't have problems, but we got the little float switch in the water tank just as a backup. So we're looking here at the separator. You can see it's got about 2 pounds on it, and I'm wanting to see if the wells will come on. We should be able to see it start climbing here shortly. I'm gonna turn the camera off and give it a few minutes, and we'll see if the wells came on. So it's the next day. We're heading back out here. It's almost 12:30. I had got them all, you know, checked all my leases this morning. I had to go to town and get some more stuff. We'll see if we can get this finished up. I'm sure some of y'all are thinking, you know, like, how do I get away with this electrical stuff up here? It's blown up, wires blown into it, stuff exploded. You know, it looks dangerous. You know, there's got to be somebody that makes you do all that stuff right. And in this part of Texas, I don't know if this is statewide, but at least in all the counties around here, there's no county inspectors of any kind. Plumbing, electrical, you know, it's the same to us as if you build a house. There's no electrical inspection. And in the same sense, there's no governing body that really inspects our electrical. Now this is sort of changed. I'll explain in a minute with the Railroad Commission, but it still somewhat holds true. You know, we can just sort of get away with anything. There was a lot of operators, you know, especially just 10 years ago. I mean, there would be people that would drill new wells, and they would just take UF cable and just lay it on the ground. They just run wire across the pasture to the new well, and there wasn't anybody to tell them that they couldn't do that, other than maybe a landowner filing a lawsuit against them and suing them if they killed a cow, or, you you know, or burn a pasture down, or burn a house down, or something, or an insurance company. But that's not something that we've ever done. My code, the code I always went by, what we always did was we ran overhead to anything that was powered. You know, there wasn't any wire on the ground, nothing was powered via wire that went across the pasture. We would run overhead to the well, put a switch box at the well, and then we'd have a small, you know, run of wire that ran on the ground, or sometimes put in conduit, or whatever we did, from the switch box down the pole over the well. This is quite contradictory to the guys that would just run UF cable across a pasture, because you'd have a rat or something chew a spot in it, and it would short and set the pasture on fire. And that's not as common as I'm probably making it sound like, but there definitely were a lot of electrical fires around here. But anyway, in the last 10 years, I think it all kind of started when they started digging those Barnett shell wells down there in the Metroplex. And I agree with them. You know, if I had somebody dug a well in my backyard, I'd want all the electrical up to the NEC code as perfect as it could be. And they came out with a new regulation, a new rule that said that all electrical must be up to NEC code. And anyway, several years ago they started kind of rattling about that around here, but they were going to start enforcing that. And that's not really what they're doing. What they're making us do now is they basically just want to be able to pull up on location and not be able to see any wire. They want conduit run down the pole into the box, you know, conduit run from the box to the ground, and the wire buried from the ground to the well. And of course, the guys in the old days that just ran wire all over everywhere, you know, this is a really big problem to them. To me, it's not that big a deal. You know, I've just sort of been fixing this stuff as it blows up, like we're fixing to do on this one well, and it doesn't really cost anything because I had to redo it anyway. Of course, there's going to come a point quickly that we'll have to sort of finish everything that's not blown up. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but it's not that big a deal. But I'm you know, as much as I hate government regulation, I think that is something that should have happened a long time ago. There should have been some kind of sanctioning body that made it illegal to take and run a piece of 480 volt cable across a pasture somewhere where somebody or some cow could step on it and or burn somebody's pasture down. But anyway, you know, we always just ran wire down the pole and into the bottom of the box, and they won't let you do that now. They do they come and inspect this stuff all the time. They drive through it, but they do a real thorough 5-year inspection where they kind of nitpick through everything. And whenever your lease comes up for its 5-year inspection, they're going to go through there and make note in the inspection that all, you know, any wire they can see, anything they don't like that's not up to their code, they'll make you fix and give you a deadline to do it. But my big gripe about running the conduit up the pole and into the ground is like this well we worked on. You know, it took a lightning strike and shot that wire in two, and if that wire had been inside that conduit, you wouldn't have been able to see it. Of course, the electricity was off because we had other things blown up, but had you walked up there and grabbed a hold of that box, that wire blown up in that conduit would have shocked you, and it would have made that box hot. And not only that, now instead of just having a wire blown into it on the pole, the box, the conduit that goes to the ground rod, the ground wire, all the way up and down the pole is all going to be energized. Anyway, what I was getting at, you know, like you pull up here and you see this blown up fuse box, and you're like, man, I can't believe that guy's got junk like that and gets away from it. But what you got to remember is this stuff is not very old. That fuse box, this has already been done once in this bucket truck, and I've only had this bucket truck for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It was all new. You know, it had new wire run down the pole, a new box put on the pole. You know, that big control panel out there was all factory built. It was all new. And though that control panel is kind of rigged up and not everything's mounted right in it, it started right and it still blows up. Anyway, my point to make is all this stuff was all new not that many years ago, and it just doesn't last. It's just not, you know, it just blows up. It doesn't matter what you put here, conduit down the pole, not conduit down the pole, wire on the ground, overhead. It doesn't matter. If lightning strikes it, it's just going to explode, and that's all there is to it. So I know we're, you know, supposedly fixing to make this better by putting the wires in conduit, you know, whatever. You know, just a few years ago, this was just exactly like what we're fixing to put up there, except, you know, other than the wires not in conduit. You know, it's not like this is from 1950. It's just some old junk that we kind of keep trying to keep going. It's not that old. You know, it's one lightning strike and the stuff we're fixing to put up there will look exactly like this. Looking down these wires gives you a sense of actually how much sag there is. Of course, up here it looks like they're literally touching the ground. You get on the ground, it looks like they're a long way in the air. But anyway, we'll pull them tight. They'll have less of a chance to flop into each other or whatever. Just a better deal. And since we're here, it's easy to do. All right, I got them all sagged. I think the bottom phase may be just about one click too tight, but I don't care, I'm gonna leave it. All right, hopefully that's the last time I gotta get in the bucket. I think I got everything. outer wires are all aluminum. They're real soft, and they're made to disconduct. They're not there for structural. And then it's got a steel wire on the inside. It's really hard, and it's hard to cut. It takes a really good pair of cutters. You almost need a little pair of bolt cutters. Anyway, I kind of like on something like this to cut the steel back farther. Kind of wrap the wire back together and then cut the aluminum off. It makes it easier to work with. But like that, I'll skin a pretty good piece of this. Flip this back around and make a couple of twists. Sort of hold it on there. This all works. So I got to put this arc shield back in place. All right, I'm gonna call this good for now. We can turn the power back on, and then I can work all this with the power hot. I'll run conduit down the pole. I'll bring the ditch switch over here. We'll ditch switch over to the motor, come up out of the ground, and put it in this seal tight. This is the wire buried, and get a ground rod. I'll probably wait till I got a backhoe out here. If you got a backhoe, you can take those ground rods and just push them right in the ground instead of having to hammer them. Put a ground rod in, run wire up here, ground this. I got all this junk. I come by here every day. I'll be in my other pickup instead of piling a bunch of crap. This pickup's already full. I'll pick up all this junk tomorrow. And anyway, on to that pole over there. So I jumped ahead a little bit. I came out here last night and brought a drill and a tap and tapped 4 holes and drilled 4 holes for this to mount. And so I got this thing mounted. Now, what I was missing, I've got them in the pickup, but they are these little things right here. It's a little piece of copper that bolts in. I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put these contacts back in here. These little plates were what we're missing out of this contactor, so this is what I had to go back up there and get. Okay, so I've got this part assembled to this, and you can basically see how it works. We got power comes in, the 480 comes in here, and then this is a switch. You know, these close across these 2 contacts. Anyway, this is what a contactor is, or some people call these a starter. So I got to wire this up. So I'm just going to speed this up and voice it over. The 3 main wires coming in the top of the contactor, those obviously are the power supply, the 480 coming in from the disconnect. There are 3 small wires that go to the phase monitor, the white cube, and they're effectively just a sensor wire. It's just allowing a reference to the phase monitor, so it can tell what the voltage is on all 3 phases. There's 2 small wires that go to the little transformer there in the middle. It transforms 480 down to 120, and that's the 120 volt that's used and my signal wire that we short to ground that is used, you know, if we have a problem at the water tank or whatever. And then the black box a little bit under the transformer is supposed to be a surge suppressor. I think I say again later on, I don't really think they do much, but I guess they can't hurt. And these don't blow up. They made some other style that were lightning arresters, and they seemed to work better, but they were one shot, and they'd get blown up all the time. You know, you had to put one on it every week to have them work. Anyway, it's got 3 wires that go up in the top of the contactor, and then out the bottom of the contactor is the 3 wires that are going out the side of the box there, and they are what energize the overhead back towards like where we were working earlier, and turn the power off and on to that part of the overhead. I'm going to go ahead and change out this socket. The reason this wasn't mounted is the screws I always carry. This is a different style than the normal ones I use, and the screws weren't long enough. The other one's thicker. I get this little socket mounted, and then I take some wire. I start replacing quite a few of these wires in here. A lot of these wires have been through quite a few different blow-ups, and they're just really burnt. They're definitely past their prime. So to try to make this where you can understand it, I'm going to give you a quick schematic of what's going on. So you understand what the contactor is. The white box up top is a phase monitor. When everything's good, the phase monitor's got a switch that closes in it. Under the phase monitor is a 120 volt transformer. One side of the 120 volt transformer runs to a ground rod, is grounded. The other side goes through the phase monitor, which switches it off and on, and into the socket that we put in. That's where the little ice cube relay goes in. The other side of that ice cube relay goes up through a signal wire up to the tank batteries, and if you take that signal wire via the monitoring system up there and short it to ground, it turns on that relay. Now the signal wire runs up the side of the pole, and it's just stapled to the pole, and what I'm doing here is I want to take and run, I'm trying to run the wire down the conduit. I can't get it to go down the conduit, so I swing down here and get my fish tape. Push the fish tape down the conduit, hook the wire up to the bottom, and then pull the wire up through the conduit. And you know, instead of having it stapled to the pole, it's now inside the conduit. Anyway, when that little 120 volt relay closes, when it's turned on, that relay trips 480 volts back from the hot side of the transformer back to the coil on the contactor. So when you touch that little signal wire to the ground that's up at the tank batteries, it turns the contactor on if you have all the phases and everything is correct. Alright, so let's shut this disconnect, and it'll count down 10 seconds and it should shut the contactor. See if anything blows up. Guess it looks good. Let's gather up our tools and go turn some wells on. Alright, here we go. I should have closed this video out on the way heading home, and I didn't, so appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, and all the good things, and we'll catch you on the motorhome project.